Hi everyone, I'm Elad. I'm a CSS HTML architect. CSS HTML architect is a kind of a front-end developer that does only CSS, and I love my job very much. Besides this, I'm the founder of the CSS Master Israel community with more than 5,000 members. I'm writing a lot of articles on CSS that you can find at medium.com in this link, and I love to talk about CSS in meetup and conferences. We are here to talk about the new CSS Logical Properties. The new CSS Logical Properties, when I first noticed them, I saw them in the developer home toolbar of Chrome when I was debugging my code, and I wrote properties like margin, and the autocomplete show me properties names like margin inline start, margin blocked end, and I immediately understand that this is the future of supporting better weight typography in website. Immediately, some members in my community started to ask me some question about this, and in the continue of the years and in the end of the years 2018, I thought to myself, maybe it's time to learn it more deeply, and which is a better way to summarize it yourself and create from that an article. I published this article in the end of December 2018. I didn't expect that it so interests so many developers in the world, but for my surprise, this is one of my successful articles. And besides of written in English, it translated into Japanese, Chinese, Russians by other web developers in the world. And I didn't understand why it's so important for so many web developers, or maybe it's more precise to say for so many people in the world. Because what is more important in website to show content? And this is really the reason why this article is so successful, because the most important things in website is to show a better way to support content for different type of languages in our website. And when I'm saying different type of languages in our website, it's not only type of Latin languages that are written from left to right. It's not all just Semitic languages that are written from right to left. There are even more type of languages like Japanese and Chinese that are written, for example, can be written from top to bottom. And before we'll dive into those new CSS logical properties, there is one important basic thing that you have to understand when you want to create a multi-language website. It's to understand how websites are working, or more precise, the axis world of a website. In every website in the world, there are two axes. The main axis that sometimes people forget is the block axis of our website. The block axis is how the flow of the website is going. Usually website going from top to bottom, and this is our block axis. The second axis is how the text is written. In English, for example, the English is written from left to right, and this is called the inline axis. Try to remember these both axes very well, because we are going to talk about them a lot in this talk. Block axis, the main flow of the website; inline axis, the main flow of the text. But in Japanese, something very different is happening. In Japanese, it may look like that the inline axis is rotate 90 degrees into the right, but don't be mistaken. In Japanese, something very different is happening. In Japanese, all the website is rotating 90 degrees to the right. And it's meaning that the header is not longer at the top, it's now in the right. The footer is very far in the left. And instead of vertical scroll, we now have an horizontal scroll. Let's see a short example for that. Here you can see example for a website in Japanese. This is the header. We have some paragraph images, paragraph, and instead of flowing vertical the website, it's now flowing in horizontal. Really amazing to see stuff like that. Okay, after we understand that we have two axes in every website, we have two properties in CSS to control those axes. The writing mode property to control the block axis. The default value of the writing mode is horizontal minus TB, meaning top to bottom. And this is the default value, and because of that, most of the websites in the world are going from top to bottom. But to support languages like Japanese and Chinese, we have another value keyword that is called vertical RL, meaning right to left. And this way, the website is now will go from right to left, like I show you in the last example. But we have another type of languages. One of the Mongolian languages can be written from top to bottom like the Japanese and Chinese, but can be reading in the second direction, meaning that the main flow of the website, instead of going from right to left, is now going from left into the right. And this is our third main options for the writing mode. After we learn how to control the block access, we now want to know how to control the inline axis, and you may already know this property. This is our all direction property, and it's here always been to control the inline axis. And it had two main values, or two values, not more. Sorry. And to support all the Latin languages that are written from left to right, we have the LTR value. And to support all the Semitic languages, that it's Hebrew and Arabic, we have the RTL value. This way the text is written from right to left. To recap it, controlling the block axis, we have the writing mode with the three main values of horizontal top to bottom, vertical left to right, or vertical right to left. To control the inline axis, we have the direction property with the LTR value to write all the text from left to right, or to write all the text from right to left with the RTL value. And we are going to talk about those new logical properties, but before we go there, we need to understand that the logical properties is a new world in CSS, but we have been living in another old world until now, and we didn't gave it any name. Let's give it a name. All the properties in CSS was physical properties, because all the directions was according to the physics. All the shorthands, all the property names was with top, right, bottom, and left, margin right, margin left, and etc., etc., etc. And because of that, all this property was called physical properties. But now in a logical properties world, we don't have any direction, because the direction can change. Instead, we have these both axes that we talk about them, the blocked axis and the inline axis. And every axis have a start and end. For example, English, the top will update into block start, the bottom will update into block end, because this is our block axis. The inline axis, how we're reading the text, the beginning that is in the left will update into inline start, and the end of the line, the right, will update into inline end. But the diagram can change in every type of languages, not like in physical properties. Logical properties, the diagram always can change. And in Japanese, all this diagram, as we know it, will rotate it 90 degrees into the right. And now our top, instead of being top, it's now in the right. The bottom of the website is now in the left. The start reading of the text, it's not in the left, it's now in the top. And the end, the reading of the text is in the bottom. Really different from where we are thinking. And it's give us a new world that top doesn't have to be all the time top anymore. It's like a matrix world. We can do amazing thing when we are working with logical properties. Then let's start to talk about the real CSS logical properties after we understand the basic things. And all the direction that has a physical direction in properties names, like top, bottom, left, and right, need to update to those start and ending axis of the blocked and inline axis. Because the default value is Latin languages in the browser, everything is updating according to the Latin languages. Top will update into block start, bottom to block end, left inline start, and right inline end. And this updating all the box model property naming convention. We don't no longer have top, bottom, left, and right. Instead, to say margin top, we have margin block start. Instead, padding left, we have padding inline start. And instead, border bottom, we have border block end, because it's the bottom of our block axis. And all those properties name of the box model is changing. And what about width and height in logical properties world? Let's think about width and height. If we have something in width, it will be height in Japanese. Even if something height in English, it will be width in Japanese. Because of that, in logical thinking, we don't no longer have width and height. Instead, we have a new properties that form a type of size. Width, because it's on the inline axis in Latin, will update into inline size. Height, because it's in the block axis, will update into block size. And of course, all the minimum, maximum width and height properties are updating as well. And this is in the left, all the physical properties box model, and start to get used to the new box model that everything changed. There isn't any name convention that stay the same. All the properties name is updating according to the logical thinking. And it's really amazing to see that, because we have been using this box model at least for 20 years, and now it's really updating. And it's not, don't just stop in the box model, because we have a lot of other direction in a lot of other properties in CSS, like position property. And the top, bottom, left and right properties are updating as well, with a small difference. Instead of top being updated into block start, it's adding a little prefix in the beginning. The inset keyword in the beginning of the property name top is updating into inset block start. And you may think that those names are too long, but let's talk about why they added the inset in the beginning of the property name. In the web, if you want to create an element with position fixed that is covering all your screen, you can write to this element, let's say pop-up, position fixed, top 0, bottom 0, left 0, right 0. This way you created an element that covers all your screen. And you may think that you will need to create it now in this way. Position fixed with the old 4 new property names with the logical naming convention. But think through for yourself why in properties like margin you have margin right, margin bottom, margin left, margin top, but you can write only margin, shorthand. And we didn't have it with CSS position at all. There isn't any connection between all those names of top, bottom, left and right. But now in CSS positions with logical properties, they fixed the past that was created with kind of mistake, that there wasn't any connection between those names, and the inset is the connection. And now if you want to create a shorthand for all the positions properties, you can write this instead. You can write position fixed with the property of inset with, for example, 4 values of 0. This way you write only 2 properties instead of 5. And it can be even easier. If all the values of all the 4 properties are the same, you can just instead write 1, 0. This way all the direction get the same value of 0, and it's a lot easier way to work with CSS position and logical properties. And not only just it's changing, everything is changing, my friend. Everything. Text align left or right, update into text align start and end according to the direction property. Float left and float right, update into float inline start and float inline end. The resize property, if you don't know what is the resize property, you have it on the text area input, when you can resize the text area or horizontal or vertical. But in a logical thinking world, you don't have an horizontal or vertical. Why is that? Because something that is horizontal in English will be vertical in Japanese, and something in vertical in English will be horizontal in Japanese. Because of that, the horizontal, vertical updating according to the axis world. Instead of horizontal, we have now the inline keyword for this property, and instead of the vertical value, we have the block value. And even the property that have not been changed until now, like background position X and Y, everything with direction is changing. We can see that in the MDN of Mozilla there are empty pages for new properties like background position inline and background position block, and everything that has any direction. If we still don't see any new property for that, you can be sure that all those property almost 100% will update into this new CSS logical thinking. And what about CSS Grid and CSS Flexbox? I think when I wrote my article, I thought to myself, oh no, it was so long article without CSS Flexbox and CSS Grid on logical properties thinking, and I thought to myself, it's too much to understand in one article so much. But for my surprise, CSS Flexbox is already written in logical thinking. In CSS Flexbox, all the alignment properties don't have top, bottom, left and right. Everything is in an alignment of start and end according to the axis of the Flexbox itself. And because of that, you don't need to do anything when you're working with CSS Flexbox. And you can guess right that in CSS Grid, it's the same. Everything is the logical thinking and the new alignment properties with the new values of start and end, and you don't need to do anything different when you're creating a logical properties website. When you are working with CSS Flexbox and CSS Grid, you can just work as you used to work with them. And I think a lot of web developers are asking themselves, yeah, it's nice, I will maybe work with it in the future in my next website. I just want to show you that it's very easy to update an old website into a new website, even without refreshing the screen in every update, in every property that you want to check. How we can update an old website into a new website. Let's talk about it shortly. This is an old code that is written in physical properties, and we now want to update it into a logical properties website. We just need to understand what to update every property separated. For example, if we know that the website is a Latin website, the default value of the website, max width, it's on the inline axis. Max width will update into max inline size because it's in the inline axis. Margin left, it's in the inline axis. English is starting in the left. Margin left will be a margin inline start. Margin right, it's the end of the reading of the text, will update into margin inline end. Margin bottom, the block axis, and the bottom is the end of the block axis, meaning that margin bottom will update into margin block end. Very, very easy. And now we just update everything from physical properties to new CSS logical properties, and now you will refresh your screen and you will be a little bit afraid. You know why? Because when we are updating a lot of things and we refresh the screen, our mind's always thinking that something need to change because we changed something from A to B, and now something need to change. But you refresh your screen, and if you done it correctly, nothing will be different. And it means that you've done a really good job, my friend. And if we've done a good job, and if we're updating and nothing is happened, how from this CSS we can create a CSS that is working for all the other different type of languages. And this is now the easy part, because I already I already teach it to you. Then what we need to do to create that the website will support all the other type of languages, we need to use all the direction property or the writing mode properties and to put it on the HTML element. For English, we have the direction with the value of LTR. For Hebrew and Arabic, we have the direction with the value of RTL. In Japanese and Mongolian, instead of using the direction property, we have the writing mode property. For Japanese, with the value of vertical right to left, RL. And for the Mongolian, the writing mode with the value of vertical left to right. And you need to understand what is happening here. In the past, if you want to create a website that supports Latin languages and Semitic languages like Hebrew and Arabic, you need to create two different CSS. And for Japanese and Mongolian, there isn't anything to talk about. We never created a website like this. But now, the same CSS can support all the type of the languages, and the only difference that we need to do is to add one property to the HTML element, and that's it. You have one CSS that support all the type of the languages. You don't need to create it smart with Sass and Sass variables that the same Sass will reproduce you two different style sheet. The same CSS working for all the type of different languages in the world. And this is really, really amazing. That you believe me that it's so easy, I wanted to see it for myself, and I created my example for myself. Let's see it. This is an example that I created in CodePen. All the properties, as you can see, are written in logical properties, like max inline size is instead of max width, margin inline start, padding block start, padding block 10, everything is written here in logical properties. And what will happen here when I will click in the drop down and I will choose the Japanese in JavaScript here in this example, I'm adding to the HTML writing mode property with the vertical right to left, and this way all the website will rotate 90 degrees to the right. Let's see this example. I clicked and that's it. Wow, in there, here all the website is now written in the direction of the Japanese. Of course, it's just example. In real world you do it in the server side, and the language need to update, the content need to update to the correct language. Really easy, but really easy. But in everything's new in CSS, and this is really a lot of changes in CSS, there are some open issues that we need to talk about them. The first issue, when we are writing all shortens of all their properties in CSS, the browsers, when you see margin with 4 values, understand that those 4 values are margin top, margin right, margin bottom, and margin left. But if the website is written in logical properties, the browser cannot know if you want physical properties or logical properties, because there isn't anything that tell the browser that this shorten need to be written in logical properties. And because of that, for now, the only way to write a margin with 4 different values is to write every property separated. And this isn't so a nice way, if I had to say. The W3C understand that this is a problem, an issue, and they are thinking in some ways maybe how to fix this problem. Their suggestion for now, it's really still in reconsidering, but we can add in the margin, in the value of the margin, in the beginning, maybe they will add a keyword that is called logical. You will put it in the beginning of the value and then you write all the 4 other values, and this way the browser will understand that this shorten is the shorten of logical thinking, meaning the first value is the margin block start, the second value is margin inline end, the third value is margin block end, and the fourth value is margin inline start. But I thought to myself that this isn't so good idea. It's good if you want to update only one shorten, but if you want to create a fully website with, I don't know, 100 shortens, you can make a lot of mistake if you're forgetting to write one of the logical keywords in all these shortens. And because of that, and because it's still in reconsidering, I thought to myself, maybe I offer my suggestion. And I really go to the W3C GitHub and offer my suggestion. I offer to create another properties in CSS, a new one that will call flow mode. The default value of this property will be physical, and it means that every website that doesn't use this property will be in physical properties, and this is the default browser, and this way all the older browser in the world don't get any problem if they don't write this property. But if we update this property in the HTML element, instead of flow mode, we'll add a new keyword that called logical. This way, because this property is written on the HTML element, it will affect all the other property that has shortened, and tell them that all the other shorthands need to be in logical thinking. And I really created this suggestion in GitHub, and you can see it in this link. And this is my really suggestion. And very few seconds after, someone told me, but what about the JavaScript? And like I told you, I'm not a JavaScript expertise, and I don't want to be. And I thought to myself, if they want to use it, they use it. If they don't want, don't use it. But I really think this is a lot better way. After a few months, because this is a subject that very interesting me, I thought to myself to check in the GitHub if something is updating with this issue, and nothing has updated. And but for my surprise, my suggestion got the most like for all the other suggestions, and just maybe my suggestion will update and affect the CSS. And the most important thing to take from what I'm telling you now, that if you have any good suggestion to update CSS, you can maybe offer it to the W3C GitHub and offer a new suggestion for CSS that maybe will affect CSS, because people, even the most smartest people, sometimes don't see all the picture because we are just people. And because of that, if you have something interesting, try to affect CSS and maybe to create it in a better way. And if you like my idea in the float mode property, like I show you here, please give me a thumbs up in the GitHub in this link. But let's go to the next issue. And the next issue is really a big problem, because this issue we can still manage without it, because we still can write all these 4 properties separated. But the next issue, we don't have any solution for now. Let's talk about responsive design. When I created the example that I show you with the website at CodePen that update when I change the dropdown from English to Japanese and all the website is flipping, I didn't tell you all the truth, because I wanted to create it a really 100% responsive example, because I love responsive design. It's really one of the amazing things to create in a website, to create it full responsive. And for my beginning understanding, I understand it really quickly that if a website in English and Hebrew and Arabic is changing according to the width, because you all know that responsive website is updating according to the width, yes? Very easy. But for Mongolian and Japanese, if the website is rotating 90 degrees to the right or to the left, the responsive of the websites need to be according to the height. Okay, we have a property for that. Instead of write max width, for example, 1000 pixel, I can write max inline size 1000 pixel. Easy, yeah? But no, it isn't so easy. You know why? Because media rules doesn't accept properties like max inline size and max block size. They don't get those new size keywords. And when I saw this problem, I thought to myself, why not? After I saw that I'm not that there isn't any, that it really doesn't work, I thought to myself to ask in the Stack Overflow community why that max inline size properties doesn't work at all in media rule. And someone very quickly answered me, and in the beginning I really didn't like his answer, because he told me that max inline size property it's not one of the properties that are allowed to be in the media rule. And he was correct, but I really understand that we have to have a property like this in the media rules, because otherwise how we create a fully responsive website for all the 4 types of languages. But you're really correct, because we cannot write any properties in the media rules. We cannot write properties like color with the value of red in the media rule. What it will do? What is meaning media rule of color red? And of course we need properties like max inline size in the media rules, but for now it still doesn't work. And it really surprised me, because I was asking this question in the end of 2018, and while we are now in the beginning in 2020, and it's still nothing is developer in this area. And it's meaning that if you want to create a website that is responsive and to support different type of languages via logical properties, you can now support only languages like Latin languages and Semitic languages, because they are both can be according to the width. And instead of writing max inline size, you can write it max width with 1000 pixels. But if you want to create a website that is working for English, Arabic, in Japanese or Mongolian, you cannot create it with these media rules. And this is really a big problem, and I hope if someone hear me, because I try to deliver it to the W3C this way or another way, but there's still not any solution for this problem. And if we are talking about problem of logical properties, let's talk about browser support. And surprisingly, all the box model properties that are working with logical properties like margin, padding, and border are already working in all the new browsers. Really, all the new browsers. Of course, not in the Explorer, but all the new browser, even Edge, everything is working. All the new box model properties of logical properties are working in all the browser. Even the new width and height, the inline size and the block size, working in all the browser. and of course the new text align with the values of start and end, working in all the browser. But this is the good news. The bad news that there are more properties that work for now only in Firefox. The float with the new value of inline start and inline end working only in Firefox. The recess property that is for text area is working only in Firefox, but the position properties that I show you with the inset prefix in the beginning, it's working only in Firefox, but there is coming good news for it, because it's under a flag in Chrome, and if Chrome, that is a WebKit browser, will support it soon, it's meaning that Firefox, Edge, and Opera will support it really soon after Chrome. And because of that, it isn't so bad news, because the most important property from these three properties is the position properties. Floating, we're using a lot less in 2020. Resize, we can live without. And position is very important, and we will get for its support very soon. But don't forget that there are more properties in CSS that didn't get any support until now for logical properties, like maybe the major rule of responsive design, and there are a lot more small things, but we still can live without them for now. And if you want to create a logical property website for now, you can maybe start to create it. Just you know that you cannot support really good Mongolian and Chinese and Japanese, but if you want to create a website that is working for all the LTR languages and the RTL languages, you can create with small things that doesn't work and maybe use it. I'm still not using it. I'm still waiting that it will get a little better support. And before we finish, my friends, I'm Elad Shechter. You can all follow me in Twitter in EladSC. You can read my articles in this link in medium.com. I have a website, eladsc.com, with all of my other talks, some other articles, and other stuff that I'm doing. And I hope you enjoy this talk via recording the Corona time for my home. And thank you all very much for listening. I see you in the next video. Thanks.